What's going on, guys? It's Cimo, and welcome back to the top 100 Yu-Gi-Oh cards of all time. We only have 30 cards left in this series, and I feel like I've been using the word broken and overpowered and just abusable so much, and yet we've covered some of the craziest cards in this game's history, but there's still 30 left, and it's only going to get worse from here. So in this video, we're going to cover numbers 30 through 21. It's completely subjective, and it's a ton of fun. So before we get into it, big shoutouts to all of my patrons and YouTube channel members, as always, for their continued support. And if you guys want to help support me in the channel, hit the join button down below or check out the links in the description. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Starting off with number 30, we have, I don't even know how to describe it. I feel like I'm running out of adjectives because this card is just fucking ridiculous. And I know I've said that too, but Return from the Different Dimension, if you have ever gotten the chance to play with this card, you know how absurdly broken this card is. Return from the Different Dimension basically allows you to special summon all of your banished monsters and at the cost of half your life points. So we know that anytime there's a card that requires us to pay half our life points, it doesn't matter because you're always going to be able to use it, and this essentially was one of the old OTK enablers, since OTKing your opponent back in the day was incredibly hard to do just because it was hard to amass so much damage onto the field, but Return from the Different Dimension made it very easily, especially in Chaos format when it was very easy to get monsters banished. You would just bring them back and you'd probably trigger a ton of effects as well. It was just ridiculous. So imagine now with how easy it is to banish monsters, having a card like Return from the Different Dimension legal. Yeah, it would be fucking overpowered and so many decks would be using it. It is a trap card and that's honestly the biggest downside of it. It was good back in the day because you could afford to wait a turn and you wouldn't lose the game, where nowadays I don't know if that would be enough, but again, this is basically like Soul Charge in trap form for banished monsters. It's just crazy, had to make it onto the list. Now moving on to number 29, this is in my opinion maybe the best boss monster on the entire list, but Masterpiece, the True Draco Slaying King, man, this card needs no introduction because, there's boss monsters, right? There's Judgment Dragon, there's Dark Arm Dragon, there's stuff like Apocryphal Towers, but there's no card like Masterpiece. Masterpiece being one of the easiest boss monsters to summon in the entire game, having immunity to whatever types of cards you use to tribute summon it, and if that weren't enough, it can also pop cards during your opponent's turn. What else could you want in a card like this? I mean, if that weren't enough, it's also splashable into other decks. We've seen so many different variants of Draco that would run Masterpiece and Dragonic Diagram and also maybe a small spell and trap lineup of the True Draco spells just so they could play Masterpiece because it is that incredible of a card. Masterpiece usually spelled game over for a lot of different decks because depending on the type of deck you were playing against, like if you were playing a trap deck, if you just made Masterpiece immune to traps, they basically had no out and you were just fucked. It just puts you in this really awkward position, and that's kind of what wasn't really too fun about it. Usually in Yu-Gi-Oh, boss monsters have some sort of weakness, and not to say that Masterpiece doesn't, but Masterpiece's weakness, I would say, is far harder to work with than other boss monsters, especially because it's able to also disrupt you during your turn. It's kind of everything you could ever wish for in a boss monster. Really incredible card. Definitely deserves to make it onto this list. Now that's going to bring us on to number 28, and for number 28, we've got Harpies Feather Duster. Now Harpies Feather Duster is arguably better than Heavy Storm because it's not going to destroy your own cards. This card's actually legal in the OCG, and honestly, they're pretty okay with it. Now it may not seem overpowered being able to wipe your opponent's entire back row, but yeah, that's pretty overpowered. I mean, the fact it's only one card, especially if you're going up against a heavy back row deck like Stun or, I don't know, Paleozoic, Altergeist. I mean, there's so many back row decks in the game. The fact that you can just, 1 for 5 them seems just completely broken and just not even necessary. That's kind of just unfair at that point. But honestly, I mean, I don't really like back row decks, so I'm kind of okay with that. Harpies Feather Duster is just one of the most powerful spell cards ever printed in this game, and really just has that legacy because it didn't really have a lot of time to really shine because it was banned so quickly. It's just an incredibly powerful card. And speaking of incredibly powerful spell cards, we've got that followed up with number 27, SnatchSteal. Do you guys remember when SnatchSteal came back for a format? And do you guys remember how it got immediately banned after they brought it back for that format? Yeah, that's kind of just SnatchSteal in a nutshell. This card is just utterly ridiculous. Anytime there's a card that allows you to take control of your opponent's monsters, it's already really powerful. I mean, we have mind control and stuff like that, but SnatchSteal is a completely different beast because realistically, SnatchSteal has no downside other than the fact your opponent's gaining 1,000 life points during the standby phase, which realistically doesn't matter at all. The fact that you're able to take their monster, you essentially keep it as long as SnatchSteal is equipped to it, which basically meant in a simplified game state, SnatchSteal stole probably more games than probably any other card during its time. Even back in the day, SnatchSteal was just so incredible because you were able to take advantage of so many different just cards and different effects that you weren't otherwise able to do so it really helped extend your plays. Now, not to mention, we're in Master Rule 4, where link summoning is a thing, so it's just a free link material, and yeah, the card is just ridiculous and definitely worthy of a spot on this list. That is going to bring us on, though, to number 26, and for number 26, we probably have one of my favorite cards of all time, and definitely worthy of being this high on the list, Zodiac Dryden. This card may not seem as powerful as some of the other boss monsters we've covered on here, but there's so many different reasons why Zodiac Dryden is incredibly powerful. This card, at the cost of a single Xyz material, can pop any card that's face up on the field, which also extends to spell and trap cards, so that's really good. Not to mention it's a quick effect, so you can use it in response to different cards as well. If you have multiple Zodiac Drydens, they are not a hard once per turn. You can use it once per turn for each, so typically back in Zodiac Mirror Match, if you establish double Dryden, that was kind of considered game over unless the opponent had a board wipe. And then you also have the fact that because it's a part of the Zodiac archetype, this card was able to pretty much be splashed and incorporated into just a numerous amount of different strategies because the Zodiac engine was so splashable. So in addition to all the other threats that your opponent may have at their deck's disposal, they would just have a Dryden in addition to that, which basically meant not only did you have to deal with X, Y, and Z in terms of their threats, oh yeah, by the way, a Dryden's gonna pop one of your cards. You also had access to Zodiac Whiptail, which turns Zodiac Dryden into one of the best pieces of removal in the entire game just because it was able to banish prior to damage steps. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. I could just talk about Zodiac Dryden all day because it is that insane of a card, and honestly, it deserves to be this high on this list just for all the reasons I just mentioned. Now, in tandem with Zodiac Dryden at number 25, if I didn't throw this card in, it really wouldn't make a lot of sense for Zodiac splash ability, Zodiac Barrage. Barrage is honestly one of the just most insane spells ever printed in this game because it allows you to splash the Zodiac engine into any single deck you wish. It is an extender, it is a starter. You're able to just start special summoning your Zodiacs directly from the deck. Remember what I said, anytime there's a card that allows you to special summon from the deck, it's probably broken in some way, and Zodiac Barrage is no exception. But what also made Barrage insane is that it also could just stay on the field and get multiple uses across multiple turns. If you use Zodiac Barrage to pop another card, it's gonna stay there for next turn, and then guess what? You can do it all over again, and not to mention, whatever card you were gonna pop with Barrage probably had some graveyard trigger, so it basically enabled other cards and synergized with them to generate you even more advantage. Zodiac Barrage is one of the strongest in-archetype spell cards I've ever seen, but it's not even really an in-archetype spell just because of its splashability and flexibility in other decks. It's synergized with so many other strategies that it definitely is worthy of making this number 25 slot. Now, moving on to 24, we're going to a card that actually just got taken off the Forbidden and Limited list, and a lot of people are really worried about that because of a certain archetype that also just happens to be coinciding with this card's release from prison, and that is Card Destruction. Yeah. Card Destruction, again, needs no introduction. This card has basically been the demise of so many different formats because it's just nuts, right? You ditch your whole hand, draw a whole new one, and the fact that you have anything that can trigger in the grave, you've got chaos strategies, like, this is all stuff we've said before. Card Destruction is just an absolute beast. And, you know, you've got stuff like Dark Worlds, I mean, you've got Chaos, you've got Chaos Dragons, I mean, now there's Danger, which we don't know how good Danger is going to be, but the fact that all the cards trigger off being discarded, Yeah, you know, this is just a card that honestly probably should not be in the game. It's one of those power cards that really just adds a lot of variance, because if someone draws it, it's just so unfair for the player who has to go up against it. I mean, yeah, there's ways to counter it like Ash Blossom, but does that really justify the card being in the game? Not really, but I guess we'll just have to see what happens. Definitely one of the most infamous histories, though. A lot of people really hate this card, and honestly, it's rightfully justified. Now, coming in at number 23, we have yet another Link monster, which a lot of people are kind of crying out to get hit on the list in some way, even though Europe has yet to have it at the time of recording this video, and that's Summon Sorceress. Summon Sorceress is already banned in the OCG, and granted their format's a little bit different, but again, it's like I've said before, anytime there's a card that allows you to special summon a monster directly from the deck with little to no cost, yeah, there's a big red flag there, and Summon Sorceress is one of the cards that can enable some of the most degenerate strategies in the game. I mean, a lot of the times when you see these FTK decks running around that are typically just killing their opponent with one shot, yeah, usually Summon Sorceress is a part of it, and yeah, there's ways that you don't even need to use Summon Sorceress, but the fact that Summon Sorceress makes it easier kind of just goes to show how powerful the card really is. I kind of like the design of it, like it makes sense, but at the same time, it's just way too broken for its own good. And honestly, I foresee this card getting hit on the ban list. Maybe not this upcoming list, but at some point in the future, because I honestly think it's too generic, it's too powerful, and I think it definitely has to go. And speaking of cards that have to go, number 22 went pretty quickly, and that card is the Forceful Century. Now, honestly, the Forceful Century, in my opinion, is a lot stronger than something like Delinquent Duo, which we covered in the last video, because yeah, it's not a +1 like Delinquent Duo is, but the fact that you get to see your opponent's hand and send one of those cards back into their deck is honestly a lot better, because having the knowledge of what's in their hand means that you can actually play around specific cards that they may have. So let's say they have, you know, 2 hand traps. Well, you can get rid of one of them with the Forceful Century, and then you know that you have to play around another one, or maybe your deck doesn't care about the other hand trap that they're playing, so it doesn't matter anyway. The knowledge in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is so just invaluable, especially when you get to look at their hand, that being able to do that, I kind of think outvalues card advantage, because it's like you pretty much know everything that they have and everything that they're capable of doing in a given turn, aside from the card they draw once their turn will begin. And shuffling back into the deck is debatable in terms of how good that is. If they're playing a graveyard-centric deck, Forceful Century shuffling back is a lot better than sending it to the graveyard, but in most cases, I think you'd want to see the card gone, especially if it's something that's like, let's say, on the limited list, because in that way you know they're not going to draw into another copy of it, but it's still a very powerful card nonetheless, one of the most powerful ever printed, and is honestly one of the veterans of the Forbidden and Limited list. But speaking of veterans of the Forbidden and Limited list, at number 21, to wrap up this video, we have one of the most overpowered cards ever printed, and I know I say that all the time, but when I talk about this card, this is just like undeniable 100% card of safe return. Holy fucking shit. Card of Safe Return is just one of the craziest cards ever printed. If you guys played back in zombie format, when Zombie Master and Goblin Zombie and Ill Blood were all pretty much just like the meta, oh my god, you know the terror of Card of Safe Return. Because yeah, I know we're talking about older Yu-Gi-Oh! Here, but every single time a zombie monster is getting special summoned to the field, your opponent was drawing a card, and it was just utterly insane. Like, could you imagine if this card were legal today? I don't even want to think about that, just because of the sheer bullshit that this card would enable, being able to just draw practically your whole deck. I mean, we're able to do so many degenerate things as it is, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Has accelerated to the point where it's just like outright broken, but with Card of Safe Return in the game, that would probably just ruin the game. That would honestly just take the game and just, you know, just ruin it. Like, it would just be over. This card is so broken, and I'm so happy it's banned, but it definitely deserves to be number 21 on this list. So, guys, that's gonna wrap up the video. We still have 20 more cards to go, and if you thought these were broken, just you wait. It's gonna get a lot worse. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. And if you found this video entertaining, consider backing me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. Because just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.